to the federal government's cancellation and forgiveness programs. We're going to talk a little bit first about who we are and what kind of assistance we might be able to give you with achieving your student loan forgiveness. We're going to talk a little bit about strategies for achieving that student loan debt relief, some different repayment options that you might have, and some general information on forgiveness and cancellation before we delve into some of the more deep pockets of programs that currently exist that might be able to help you get that forgiveness and relief. We'll also talk a tiny bit about some of the legal challenges that are currently making this a bit of a roller coaster right now. And then we'll talk about how, you might be able to weather that storm. So we're going to have a lot of information coming up. I'd like to encourage you, if you do not find the information that you need during this session, please feel free to reach out to me via the information that is included at the end of the presentation, and I would be happy to assist you. So you're wondering, who is VLP-CNY? We are a provider of legal aid services for people in central New York, mostly civil litigation and civil matters. However, we have recently become a partner with the EdCap Network, which is the New York State's Educational Debt Consumer Assistance Program. And what that is a state program that's designed to assist people who are having trouble with student loan debt with figuring out if there are different repayment options they might have, that whether or not they might have different ways to achieve forgiveness and cancellation, whether they might be better off to consolidate their debt, how to resolve any issues they're having with their servicers, because we're all having those, and how to prevent default so that someone who is currently in default can get out of default and avoid things like Social Security offset and tax intercepts, which no one wants, and so we can help you achieve that as well. So we're going to talk first about some strategies for tackling student loan debt, because we really have to have an idea first off of what you want. What do you want to achieve with your student loan debt? So there's a couple strategies. The first one is to pay your debt in full as quickly as possible. So this strategy is usually used by people who have a higher income and a low balance, or have a high income relative to their balance. And so with that, you're just kind of lumping money onto the payments. You might have a 10-year repayment program. You're paying double every month. You're paying as quick as you can, so that you try to get your loans paid off in full as fast as possible. The second strategy is the one that I see a lot of people pursuing, which is that you're pursuing forgiveness through one of the either PSLF program, IDR program, one of the programs that helps you pursue forgiveness. And what that is you basically either have a high debt to income ratio, or you are engaged in a program where it's really not a good idea for you to make extra payments. You're throwing money at something that will eventually resolve if you stay within the program. So with that strategy, what you do is you make the minimum required payments under usually an income-driven repayment program until you're eligible for forgiveness, whatever the time period is for that. So whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, you just make sure you make those payments for that period of time at that lower amount, and then you will ultimately achieve forgiveness once you get to that time point. The other strategy, the third strategy, and this is one that's a little bit more macabre and a little bit more kind of uncomfortable for people, but it's the idea of really just paying the minimum you can until death do you part. And what that strategy really means is that student loans can become more of a management game rather than a repayment game, depending on what your planning is for your future. If paying off your debt is just not a feasible option, you're an older person, you're someone who took out a ton of debt and then got sick, you're someone who took out a ton of debt and then had something unforeseen happen where you're not able to make as much money as you thought you were, that is really a way that you can manage your loans without having to repay them. The good news is that federal student loans are dischargeable upon death. If someone passes away, it does not pass down to their family as debt that needs to be paid by an estate. So folks can be reassured that if they do move forward with that strategy, that it will be successful, if they pass away, with getting that debt discharged. That's one of the options that not a lot of folks like to talk about, but it is acceptable option for a lot of people who are older and have a ton of debt. So, one of the things we'd like to talk about also is, okay, so we've picked out what our strategy is. Now, how do we repay that, using that strategy? And there's really two different ways to repay if you're going to do a repayment. So that's really for strategy 1 and strategy 2. There's traditional repayment plans. Traditional repayment plans are more predictable payments. They usually have a shorter repayment period, which is usually 10 years. You don't have to recertify that plan or verify your income every year. What you really do is you make a payment of a certain amount every month for 10 years and boom, your loans are gone because they're paid in full. There are some downsides to that, which usually means that you have a higher monthly payment, kind of relative to your income. You have limited flexibility in adjusting your payments. It doesn't depend on your income. Like if you have 2 jobs, you lose one of your jobs, unfortunately the payments stay the same with that one. And there's also no forgiveness. What it means is that you are paying off the balance of the loan. It's just that you're paying it off on, every month, same payment over a period of time. For those plans, there's something called the standard plan, which is 10 years of paying on the loans. There's something called an extended plans, which is really an extended period of time, 20, 25 years. That one is dependent on your balance. You can only use the extended plan if you have a high enough balance. And then there's something called the graduated repayment plan, which is where your payments start out low and then kind of build up at a set pace over the years until you've paid off your debt, within the 10 or 20 years or whatever it is. The caveat with that one is that it grows every year at a certain percentage, whether your income increases or not. And then there's something called income-driven repayment plans. There's a lot of them out there. We've heard a lot of talk recently about the SAVE program. But what these are, they're programs that are based on someone's income. So, they usually are tied to some sort of loan forgiveness after 10 or 25 years. You can adjust your payments when your income changes. If you lose your job or you take a lower salary job, you can adjust your payments downward in order to kind of get a little relief while you're making that adjustment. We always say that this is best suited for someone with a high debt balance and a lower moderate income, or people who are pursuing forgiveness programs. And most forgiveness programs require you to be enrolled in this kind of plan, like an income-driven repayment plan. You do have to certify every year. There's a lot of interest accumulation. Obviously, the goal is to have that extra interest discharged, but there is interest accumulation, and it is a longer repayment period, extend your time to be debt-free. That is other than the public service loan forgiveness plan. Public service loan forgiveness is a 10-year forgiveness, so we can talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but really, that's the only time when the period is not longer than your standard or your standard repayment plan. So the plan names you might have heard for that income-driven repayment are the SAVE plan, the pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, and income-contingent repayment. The difference between those two, income-based and income-contingent, is who can take advantage of them and what percentage of your income is used to calculate the monthly payment. SAVE right now is currently on hold because of some litigation that we'll talk about a little later. But unfortunately, people cannot currently enroll in the SAVE program. You can make an application for some of these other programs, but it has to be on paper. So right now, there is a limit to IDR plans that are available. The other thing that you have to remember is those IDR plans are subject to change. They're not codified. Most of them are not legislated, and so something that the courts can play around with, as we've seen from SAVE, and so they're not guaranteed to be existing forever under that same framework. So that is just a kind of a warning. So what do we do once we have our strategy and our repayment plan picked out? Now we start thinking about how are we going to achieve that forgiveness or discharge using those two ideas. Just as an FYI, so what forgiveness usually means is that you qualify for relief of your student loan balance based upon a job or an employer that you're working with And then a discharge is where you get loan relief based on some other reason, like your financial situation, that you've come to the end of your time for payment, 10 or 20 or 25 years. And then cancellation means it's kind of a general term that's used for both. So if you hear somebody talk about student loan cancellation, they could be talking about forgiveness or discharge. So those are just a little definition of those terms for you. So these are the forgiveness programs that you should know about. That these are the bigger repayment programs. And the forgiveness program that most people talk about is the second one down, which is public service loan forgiveness. And what PSLF does is that after 10 years of having your loans in repayment under one of the income-driven repayment plans and working full-time, which means under this plan an average of 30 hours a week for a nonprofit or governmental employer, the remaining balance of the loans is forgiven. One caveat, this is only for direct loans. Second thing is that you can switch jobs during that, but you have to stay in either a nonprofit or governmental employer working full-time to be able to carry your credits out to meet the 10 years. This is a great plan for those who already are working for a nonprofit, somebody who says, I have a huge loan balance, but I really want to work in this public service area. It gives you some ability to do so because after 10 years, your loans will be repaid. So it does give you, a little bit of incentive to go into those industries or governmental agencies. There's something called the income-driven repayment forgiveness. This one is where you make a payment under a specific plan for 10 to 25 years. It's mostly for 20 to 25 at this point. But once you get to the time where you've made those payments for 20 or 25 years, your rest of your money is forgiven. The rest of any debt that you have is forgiven. You have to be enrolled in an IDR plan, but you don't have to work for a specific employer. So if you have a great job that you love, it's in the private sector, and you really still have these huge student loan debts, you can enroll in income-driven repayment and still look forward to getting student loan relief within around 20 to 25 years. For that one, you do have to certify your income every year. And you do for public service loan forgiveness as well. There are, the Department of Education does have the ability to find out your income from your IRS tax filings, but that is something that we can talk a little bit more in a few minutes. There's another plan called the Borrower Defense to Repayment. And what this does is it discharges loan balances for borrowers who are defrauded by a higher education institution. Now, what does that look like? It means you attended a school that engaged in misconduct and you took out loans to attend that school. There's a number of examples out there. What that basically means is you probably went to a for-profit school, a school where they said, okay, if you come to our school, you will be able to work in this industry, take out this huge student loan, we'll get you into this industry. You get to the end of that time and find out, number one, you're not qualified to go into that employment. Number two, they did not actually get you those kind of job opportunities that you thought you were going to get. And number three, that they did it on purpose, that it was misconduct. You were deliberately drawn into a program and you took out those federal loans expecting an outcome and did not achieve that outcome. This one is a little bit harder to argue, but it's definitely something that is doable and can be argued primarily by people who go to for-profit schools, but there are other examples of that as well. If you enter into a school where you're not actually qualified to begin, like if you're going to a community college where you actually didn't even have a high school diploma yet, and they encouraged you to attend and it wasn't, you didn't actually have the ability to complete the program or get a job with the program, that would be another one of those examples of a borrower defense to repayment possibility. A lot of folks approach me about the total and permanent disability discharge. This is one that allows people to discharge their loan balance if they become disabled. A disability has to be an illness, an injury that prevents them from engaging in substantial gainful activity, which means you basically can't work enough and earn enough to support yourself. Good news is that does include mental health illness or physical health illness. There are certain categories of illness that are easier to get, more automatic discharge based upon, and there are some categories where we have to have a doctor engaged who will, basically send a form saying that that person is unable to engage in substantial gainful activity for this period of time, and that therefore they cannot work enough to support themselves. And that remaining loan balance is then discharged based upon that total and permanent disability discharge. This plan does affect your ability to get further student loans within a period of time down the road, but it is an opportunity for people who are ill and can no longer work, or have an injury, can no longer work, and support themselves. All right. So there's some other programs that are not as commonly talked about. And these are the ones that, I like to kind of point out to people because they are a little bit more kind of covert. New York State has a new program called the Get on Your Feet Loan Forgiveness Program. And it's a little kind of a misnomer because it's not a forgiveness program. What it does is it pays your loan payments for 24 months for eligible participants. So if you earn an undergraduate degree from a college or university in New York and you live in New York State, they will pay 24 months of your loan payments. There are some other eligibility requirements about this one, but it's a great opportunity to kind of give people that first 2 years to really start building up their income after graduation from a New York State college. Teacher loan forgiveness. There are two types of teacher loan forgiveness. There is federal teacher loan forgiveness, where there are, after 5 years of working in a designated subject area in a shortage area, which means usually a low-income community where it's difficult to recruit teachers, the federal government will forgive $17,500 of that person's federal loans. They have to certify that at the end of the 5 years, and then, get the forgiveness for that amount of money. However, the New York State also offers a teacher loan forgiveness program through the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, and that offers $20,000 in forgiveness payable at the rate of $5,000 per year for 4 years, and the teacher would certify that at the end of the first year, at the end of the second year, third year, and fourth year. The caveat about that is that oftentimes the application says it's coming soon, and it doesn't actually appear on the website, and then it does appear on the website for a few brief days, and then it's gone. So this is one, if you're looking to do that New York State teacher loan forgiveness, you really have to look at the Higher Education Services Corporation website frequently to get that application when it's up there before they take it down again because the funds are exhausted. The other caveat is you cannot pursue teacher loan forgiveness and PSLF for the same period of time. So you have to really take a look with a counselor at whether teacher loan forgiveness or PSLF are your best bet. And that's something that myself at VLP, we can definitely assist you with taking a look at your specific situation. There's something called a school closure discharge. What that means is if your school closes while you were enrolled or shortly after you withdrew and you didn't kind of transition into a comparable program, or you did transition and it didn't work out, then you can get a discharge of your federal loans based upon that school closure. So people who went to like Casanova and then it closed and there was some difficulty with transitioning following enrollment at Casanova, that person does have the opportunity to apply for a school closure discharge. This is one that not a lot of people know about, but it is possible to get a discharge of your federal student loans in bankruptcy. It's not, it's not impossible. There's something called the undue hardship test. And so what that means is basically you have to show that, if you were required to pay these loans back, that there's a hardship that it would prevent you from being able to, support yourself for a certain period of time, and that, that is not a situation that's going to be relieved anytime in the near future. What you want to do with that one is really seek the advice of an experienced bankruptcy attorney who specializes in student loan discharges, because it does require a certain approach. It is a little bit easier right now under the Biden administration than it has been in the past. because of the way that these are being approached, but it is not the easiest discharge to get. So it's definitely something we use as a last resort. And then there's the final kind of discharge that not a lot of people like to think about, but this is, it's really it is feasible to try to just manage student loans until the person passes away. And this is a really good strategy for people who have plus loans. A lot of older people have plus loans, and they're worried that if they pass away, that it's going to become someone else's burden. Well, the beautiful thing about plus loans is, upon the death of the borrower, which is the parent, they do become discharged. They don't pass down to the child for which the loans were borrowed or anything like that. So, if it's possible for the parent to manage these using a series of consolidations, deferments, forbearances, different kinds of kind of holding this off, it is possible for someone to kind of manage their loans in perpetuity rather than ever repaying them. So that's not something we like to think about. It is more of a management game versus a repayment game, but it is doable. So if you're interested in figuring that out, please do let me know, and I can try to assist you with that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about public service loan forgiveness, because this is something a lot of people are interested in. You have to be employed by a government or not-for-profit organization. There is a list on the Department of Ed website which shows which employers are eligible. There are other employers who are eligible that are just not listed because they haven't had an application yet. So that's something that a counselor can assist you with kind of determining. There are certain categories of nonprofits that are exempted from this. So we want to make sure that you're in the correct kind of public service employer before proceeding with this kind of forgiveness plan. What the borrower would do is make an equivalent of 120 qualifying monthly payments. That payments have to be made under an accepted repayment plan. Technically, that is an income-driven repayment plan. The reason why standard plans don't work for PSLF is because under a standard plan, you're supposed to be repaying for 10 years and your loans are paid off. Well, under PSLF, your loans are forgiven after 10 years of repayment. So it's kind of a useless thing to be enrolled in PSLF with a standard repayment plan, because you can't really, you'll be working towards nothing. You'll just be making a payment. So really we say that it has to be under an income-driven repayment plan. You also have to be working full-time for an eligible employer each month that an eligible payment is made. And what that means is you have to be working full-time, 30 hours a week more for an eligible employer, and you have to make an eligible payment, which means payment in full for that particular month. You can, however, put together 2 part-time jobs at nonprofits or governmental agencies as long as the total hours come together to be 30 hours a week. PSLF is beautiful because when yours a discharge, there is no tax penalty for the borrower. So you get your discharge and you don't owe a tax penalty based upon that money that's forgiven. Acceptable plans for that payment are the SAVE plan, which used to be called Repayee. Unfortunately, that one is on hold due to some litigation that's currently ongoing, and we have no time frame for when that is going to be back in play, or if it is. The difference between SAVE and some of the other plans is that SAVE was supposed to cap payments at 5% of someone's discretionary income, versus most of the other programs are 10% or more. Pay-as-you-earn repayment program, income-based repayment program, and the income contingent repayment plan. PSLF can be applied to plus loans if the parent is engaged in public service. So that's something you can talk to us about, helping you figure out how to apply for. You can also utilize this, these different plans to figure out, is it worth the financially for you to take a public service job at a lower income if you have small loans with a small possibility of forgiveness, or if it would be better for you to pursue a job in the private sector where you earn more money each year and then just pay those loans off. So this is kind of one of the strategies that we can discuss with you. Eligible employment is really, it's not about what you do there, it's who you work for. So whether you're a janitor or the CEO of these particular institutions, It does not affect your ability to get PSLF. It really matters who you work for. So governmental agencies, military, and not-for-profit organizations. There are certain restrictions on those not-for-profits that exclude certain types, and that's something I can help you look at. For-profit organizations that are ineligible include all for-profit organizations, a contracted organization that's for-profit. So if you work for a nonprofit through a profit-based contractor, unfortunately that makes you ineligible. Labor unions and partisan political organizations are also ineligible. The borrower in this plan has to certify their eligible employment each year, and they also have to go in and recertify their employment or their income. However, much of the time, the government can withdraw that information directly from the IRS. What does it look like to be a full-time employee? It really means that working that 30 hours a week. However, teachers, like how do we measure how often a teacher works? Because there's usually a time in the summer. What we look at is teachers are considered full-time if they work 8 out of 12 months, 30 hours a week, and they're credited by their employer with full-time employment, full year. So most teachers fall into that category. And then we have the issue with non-tenured or adjunct faculty members, which there are more and more people who work for colleges are non-tenured or adjuncts, and they came up with a way of calculating whether that person works 30 hours a week or more. And what that means is that we take a look at their contact hours and we multiply them by 3.35. And that is a surprise for a lot of adjuncts and non-tenured faculty members because they do actually qualify for PSLF, despite the fact that they're not full-time employees of that college, because a lot of adjuncts work for different schools, and we can add all of their various employments together to determine which months qualify for PSLF eligibility. All right, so if you go to the studentaid.gov website, log in, you can actually take a look right on there to see if you are already enrolled in PSLF, and if you are, how many payments you've already made. And that is a beautiful thing because it used to be people had no idea how many they'd made. They had to call the servicer. Sometimes the servicer didn't have the information correct. And this gives people the ability to look month to month. Are my payments being correctly counted? And when you get to the 120, you get a magic congratulations banner that says you don't have to make any more payments. Your loans will be forgiven within the next 30 days. And it also allows you to take a look at in the next few months, you should have an IDR counter on there as well. All right, so IDR forgiveness is a program that we talk about a little bit, but is not as familiar to a lot of people. And what it means is basically, within 20 to 25 years of making payments under an eligible IDR plan, which means an income-based repayment plan, your remaining balances are forgiven. And that is, whatever the interest is built up during that time, whatever the principal that remains is forgiven. Now, the two things about that is usually the 20 years is if you have undergraduate loans only, 25 is if you have undergrad and graduate loans. And this is one where after 2025, amounts forgiven under this plan will be taxable. So that is a little bit different than the PSLF, which is is codified in that that tax will not be taxable. This after 2025, the law that makes it non-taxable currently is going to expire. And so whether or not Congress puts that law back in place will determine whether these forgiveness amounts are taxable. But right now the plan is that after 2025, they will be taxable. IDRF, there is a kind of IDRF that can be applied to graduate loans, and that's the ICR. So the ICR payments, can be used to get forgiveness for people who are parent plus loan borrowers after a certain amount of repayment. Plus loans for graduate and professional students are eligible for all the usual income-driven repayment plans and forgiveness based upon that selected plan. So whether they're in payee, save, IBR, ICR, depending on the amount that's owed, will really determine how long they have to go before forgiveness. Usually, when you're on the studentaid.gov website, very soon there's going to be trackers for whatever plan the person is enrolled in. It's going to show them how many months they need to achieve and how many months they've already achieved towards the forgiveness on their plan. All right, so I don't know if you've heard, but a lot of folks are talking about the IDR account adjustment. And what this is a response of the Biden administration to a lot of malfeasance that has been kind of on the part of servicers for student loans in the past, whereby they were not kind of directing students towards programs that would qualify them for things like public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment, and instead we're putting them into continuous forbearances, continuous deferments, telling them, your only option is a standard repayment plan, and so the folks were not enrolled in an IDR plan. And so the Biden administration is looking back through these years and years of payments and looking to see what periods should have been counted if the person had been given the correct information about programs that were available. And so people who have student loans are going to get credit. And this is going to be for everyone who has loans. And then whether or not they were in this program already. And then you can enroll in an IDR afterwards if you have enough months that you think that forgiveness based upon this idea is going to be in your best interest. You can get additional credits here for periods in repayment, time spent in forbearance of 12 consecutive or 36 cumulative months, deferments prior to 2013, economic hardship deferments after 2013, and any of those that are months that are prior to a loan consolidation. So if you consolidated your loans and thereby think that you lost a whole bunch of IDR payments, well, the good news is those are going to be reapplied to a lot of people's loans. This is a one-time adjustment. This isn't something that's going to happen multiple times. It's basically just to kind of set the scale back to the middle so that people kind of get those months credited that they might have gotten credited if they'd been given the correct information by the servicers in the past. Borrowers with direct or FFEL loans are going to get this benefit automatically, and they'll be notified later this year of their qualifying payments. Like I said, there should be a tracker on studentaid.gov upcoming that will allow those people to take a look at their current state for IDR, how long they are going to take to get forgiveness, and kind of how they need to make payments going forward to keep building on that IDR payment count. The only bad news is right now, because of the SAVE litigation, this is still on hold. The counts are going to be going on to the studentaid.gov websites, but any forgiveness based on those counts is currently on hold because of the SAVE litigation. Doesn't mean that, down the road, it doesn't mean that folks aren't going to get discharges based on those counts. It just means that right now there's a stay in place preventing any sort of mass forgiveness based upon this, based upon the SAVE plan litigation. All right. So now we've talked about two of the bigger programs. This is one that a lot of people don't really understand, the total permanent disability discharge. And what this means is that 100% of person's debt is discharged due to disability. There are certain categories of disability that are automatically qualifying. The person has a degenerative nerve disease. They have something that is on a list that the government created, which shows, boom, that person automatically gets discharged of their federal student loans because they have this particular diagnosis. And these are eligible for direct loans, FFEL loans, Perkins loans, teach grants that turn into obligations. There are three ways to receive a TPD discharge. The first one is disabled veterans that automatically qualify. The second one is Social Security. If you get SSDI or SSI disability, you can apply through Social Security to have that information provided to the Department of Education to get your TPD discharge. And then the third one is with a physician certification. And what that means is that, your doctor will fill out a form saying that this person is currently ill. This is, their current diagnosis. I anticipate that this illness will last for a certain period of time. And then that, will basically allow the Department of Ed to discharge this debt based upon that physician's certification. And that's something that I at VLP can help you with, because this is a kind of a complex process sometimes. And, we love to help people who are having these issues, especially if you've been denied a TPD discharge. Please do give us a call. We can definitely try to figure out why you were denied and see if there's anything we can do to get you the proper certifications to be approved. All right, so let's talk a little bit about borrower defense to repayment. This is the one that I talked about earlier, where if your school committed misconduct, you might be eligible to have your federal student loans discharged. There was a recent decision, something called the Cardona versus Sweet decision, which was a big student loan relief lawsuit based upon this idea that if a student is misled by their school deliberately, and that person can prove that they were misled, they can file a claim with the Department of Ed, and the Department of Ed will determine if they're eligible for loan forgiveness. A lot of the colleges that were included in the Cardona decision were, the bigger for-profit, nationally known schools that were bringing in a lot of students who weren't qualified for the program, or for which they were promising outcomes for the program that were not sustainable or achievable. This only applies to direct federal loans. So it's not something that you can extend out to any other kinds of loans, but it does give some relief under those federal direct loans. All right, so closed school discharge. What this means is if your college closed and you were enrolled there, or you had just withdrawn from the college, you can get a discharge of your federal student loans. And if you withdraw, within 180 days prior to the time that school closes, you can also get a discharge. But the deal is you can't have accepted a continuation of the program at another school. So if you transitioned from Casanova to SU and it went well, and you transitioned successfully, then unfortunately you can't go back and say, look, I don't want to pay these student loans from Casanova. I want to move forward with getting a discharge based on a closed school discharge. Well, only if you didn't get that successful transfer, do you get to use this. But if you transitioned from Casanova to SU and it went poorly, you could be eligible for discharge 1 year after your last day of attendance. So we might want to, you might want to contact a counselor and really talk about this idea of whether or not you're eligible for a closed school discharge. I know we have a lot of students that transition from Casanova here in Syracuse to a lot of different schools. And, some of them are having a great time, and some of them it did not end well. So I think, we could definitely take a look at whether or not you're eligible for a closed student school discharge based upon this particular regulation. All right, so how do I apply? Well, how do you apply for all of these? There's different processes. For PSLF, you do something called completing the employment certification form annually. That form is the only form currently accepted electronically right now through a lot of the servicers and through the studentaid.gov. It's going to require you to have information about your employer, an email address from someone at your employer who can electronically sign the form, and know your dates of employment and stuff like that. So you go ahead and go into the studentaid.gov, you submit that employment certification form. It goes electronically to your employer, who signs it, sends it back electronically, and it's fairly quickly uploaded to your PSLF account. Now the others are having other kinds of applications right now are proving difficult because of the SAVE litigation. A lot of things have been kind of either put on hold or put into a suspended animation, or just kind of downgraded. And what that means is some of them you can still apply for, but you need to apply on paper by submitting a paper application through the mail. We encourage people not to do that per PSLF, because those will just sit in a pile for a while until the servicers get a chance to go through them. But if you're applying for certain kinds of income-based repayment plans and things like that, there is a paper application that you have to submit right now. And that's something I can help you kind of go through the ideas and thoughts about. You can file an application for TPD, and doing that, there's a TPD website that specifically deals with those types of applications. If the person is getting Social Security disability or veterans benefits based on a medical discharge, that information can actually be provided directly to the Department of Ed. If not, then a form has to be manually signed by a doctor, and that has to be mailed physically to the Department of Education at a certain address. So that's definitely something that we can help you figure out. For all these applications, however, it's essential to keep records and stay informed about the loan status during the process. So what that means is you can't submit an application for PSLF and assume that you're now in the PSLF program. You really need to go back and check the studentaid.gov account to make sure that your application was uploaded, that your employment certification was counted towards your PSLF, that your servicer was changed to the PSLF servicer. You can't apply for teacher loan forgiveness, and just hope that everything is gone and goes through and just assume that your loans are paid in full. No, you have to go through and make sure that your loan status was updated, that you are properly credited with the number of years you're teaching or anything like that. So we always encourage people, keep up to date. Don't assume your loans automatically go into deferment when you file one of these. They should, but they don't automatically necessarily, and it might require you to call the servicer and just give them a heads up. We don't want you going into default while you're waiting for a decision on some form of a repayment plan or discharge that you're waiting. So let's, if you need help with that, please hit me up. All right, so uncertainty right now. So that, student loans recently have kind of been a roller coaster. Litigation has introduced a lot of uncertainty into the system. Things that we thought were true on Monday are not going to be true on Wednesday. And that is unfortunately kind of making it into a very difficult situation for people to figure out what to do with their student loans. People who are newly graduated, we've all had this on-ramp period where you've been your loans have been in kind of a stasis for the last few years after COVID. Well, that expires very shortly. So, as of, I think it's November 1st, people are going to start moving back into repayment. So, organizations like BLP or other EdCap organizations can help you right now figure out whether you should consolidate. Because there's some loans you shouldn't consolidate right now, because if you consolidate them, you'll lose out on forgiveness opportunities. Or you'll lose months count or anything like that. So we can help you look at that and figure it out. For updates right now, I would say you can contact BLP. You can take a look at the Federal Student Aid website for updates on Save Plan. You can go to studentaid.gov. They have some great kind of tutorials and updates on things. The Department of Ed has a lot of updates on the SAVE program. But right now it's a very uncertain period, so you really should consult with an educational consultant if you're in New York through the EdCap program or through a consultant in your state before deciding if you're going to go ahead and file an application that you're thinking about filing. So if you have questions about a specific situation and you're in the state of New York, here is my information. That's my phone number, email address, website address. You can go through our website to apply. You can email me and we can get you through the application process. And luckily, this program is sponsored by the state of New York, and there's no income limitations for people who are looking for student loan assistance through this program. So if you have a high income and you're still looking for student loan assistance, please feel free to go ahead and contact our office. If you have a low income, no income, any of these incomes, you're eligible for our services through this program. And so if you have any additional questions, also, if you just want to know what's going on with the SAVE litigation, I can do a quick update with you just after you're doing intake with us. I can help you figure that out and how it might impact your situation. So I wanted to thank everyone for attending our webinar today and really encourage you. I'm going to drop our information into the link for this particular live, and then you can feel free to contact us at your nearest opportunity. So thank you very much and have a great day.